Dave Simmons.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I add my congratulations to the member for Congleton for securing today's debate, in which it's been characterised by a number of very intelligent, very humanitarian speeches on today's topic. And I'll be particularly struck by the comments from the member for Airdrie and Shotts from Glasgow North and from Wickham. When we reflect on the subject of the debate before this one, or the discussion before this one, and the events of yesterday in the English Channel, it is clear to all of us with an interest in humanitarian issues around the globe that if we were to create a Venn diagram of different types of oppression, we would find a high degree of commonality between those places where there is a lack of freedom of religion and religious expression, and those places where there is a lack of freedom to express political, gender, sexual values in the way that we, in what is for the most part a liberal and Western democracy, would regard as something we should take for granted. And it clearly is enormously important, as we consider the work of the United Nations on this, that we are able to focus in this place on the values, which are not just the values of the great religions of the world, but the values that we tend to hold very dear as British values too, that we hold in common, and that we are able to be robust in defence of those values. And I was particularly struck, for example, by the comments of the member for Glasgow North, who is no longer in his place, because Glasgow is one of those places that has stepped forward as a city of sanctuary for people seeking asylum in the United Kingdom. And it stands out in Scotland for having done that. It is a place which has been known for many years for the compassion which it has shown, and not just compassion expressed as a sentiment, but expressed in a practical way of ensuring that there is housing, there is education, there is care available for the people of this country who need that at a time when they are going through the asylum process. And when it comes to challenging institutions, I think it is particularly important to highlight the need for empathy, which I think the member for Airdrie and Shotts touched on in her comments. I'm always struck, representing, like the member for Wickham, an extremely diverse constituency where there are people of faith, there are people who are Muslims, there are people who are Christians, there are people who are Jews, there are people who adhere to all of the great world religions, and many of the smaller ones as well. That navigating things like the planning system can seem enormously challenging. If you want to create a new Islamic education centre and a mosque, it can feel like the odds are stacked against you in a way that would not be the case if you wish to open a new church, for example. So we need to recognise in this country that when we talk about those shared British values, that we are genuinely inclusive, and we ensure that everyone from whatever faith in the United Kingdom who adheres to those values also has equality of access to our system. And I've been struck, in particular since becoming a parent, by the usefulness of the British Values programme in our schools for opening that opportunity up to as many people as we can across our constituencies. So for my 6-year-old son, pursuing British values has meant the opportunity to go to a church, to look at the symbolism of Christianity, and to talk about what that means. It's meant making diva lamps for Diwali and having discussions about what this means for people, why this celebration is taking place, what the overcoming of the darkness by light means. It's meant having people coming in from different local religions to talk about the work that they've been doing to support members of their community through the COVID pandemic, and how the faith and the religious institution that they are a part of has been so important in making a difference to people in that area of all faiths and of none. So that diversity is something that in a constituency where there are more than 100 first languages spoken, I think we recognise as an enormous strength. And it's a strength that's been proven in the context of the pandemic, and it's a strength which we can see developing in our educational institutions for the future. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to finish with a request to the Minister to consider. And it comes back very much to what we were discussing earlier on in this House, an issue which many have mentioned, of those who come to seek asylum in our country. We know that there is a recognised need to establish safe and legal routes for people in order to disrupt the business model that people smugglers use. Those who were clearly and very directly responsible for the deaths of people in the English Channel yesterday. And we've heard in the contributions from the member for Congleton and very many others, including the member for Strangford, of people across the globe who find themselves in a position of enormous difficulty, sometimes very direct peril to life and limb, as a result of adhering to a particular religion. So may I encourage ministers, as the cross-government discussion develops, about what those safe and legal routes look like, what it means to people in Iran, what it means to people in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in various countries in Africa, that we are always recognising the perils and the changing perils that adherence to a particular faith and freedom of religion may bring in those places, and that in putting together those safe and legal routes for those who will find sanctuary in the UK, that we are thinking about how that freedom of religion can be protected, and those who we are not able to protect can come and find sanctuary in our country legally.